Welcome to the California Exposition State Fair and the largest September 11th memorial in the Western United States. I'd like to thank all of you for coming today and spending your time to help support the 9/11 memorial and help us always remember. I'd like to thank the city elected officials, our county elected officials, our state capitol representatives, and our federal friends. Veterans associations are monumental in bringing this to life every year. What you see around you, everything that's here is based on donations. Everything from the beams, the floating walls, the towers, everything is through private donations. So I'd like to thank all those people who have donated to us and all that will in the future. My name's Craig Walton. I'm the Chief of Police at Expo. And they cut me down to like a minute and 20 seconds, so I still told them I had to tell a story. I've been a police officer for more than 30 years. Every trainee that I've had in the last 30 years, I tell them the same thing. When you leave your family, your wife, your loved one, your spouse, your significant other, every morning, you should be kissing them goodbye and telling them that you love them. Because you never know how your day is going to end. This memorial reminds me every time I drive by, my office is right up 100 yards away. Every time I drive by, it reminds me that I was righter than I ever thought I would be. Behind me, the memorial was, as I said, it's donated, everything is here. Behind me are the beams that were picked up from ground zero, about 12 stories of debris. Our board of directors went back to New York, picked out what they wanted, private donations, had them shipped out here to Sacramento. They were put on a truck, brought down here. The ball behind you is the names of everyone who perished in the Twin Towers, to be memorialized for eternity at Expo. On the other side, where the military flags are, is a replica of the Pentagon, which represents the names of all the people who perished, those that were on the flight that were crashed into the Pentagon, to be memorialized for eternity. On my right, your left, is a significant wing that is a replica to represent the plane that went down in Pennsylvania. I'd like to introduce Matt Ducato, who will take us through the rest of the ceremony.
Good morning. Can we take this moment to please silence our cell phones? Thank you. First female commanding officer of the New York City Port Police Academy used her service weapon to shoot out the revolving doors of the North Tower to help the bottleneck as more people escaped, only to be seen for the very last time as the tower collapsed and she was carrying an injured person down the stairs. Friar Judge, the New York Fire Department, first fatality on the ground, rushing at the site of the plane crashing to help pray for the wounded. Jordy Wells Crowder wore his red bandana up and down the flights of stairs 17 times, only to be seen rushing back up. As the carnage unfolded in New York City, members of our nation's military were thrust into the new fight as the E-wing of the Pentagon was hit and collapsed. Private vehicles were used as ambulances to ferry the wounded to Walter Reed. Halls were filled with the wounded, a telling foreshadow of the next 2 decades. At the same time, a plane of strangers, united for one cause, lost their fight bravely in the field near Shanksville, Pennsylvania. We stand here today to not only remember those we lost on September 11th, but those our nation has lost in the ensuing years. Thousands of brave men and women, native and foreign born, have worn the stars and stripes in Baghdad, Fallujah, Herat, Tikrit, Kandahar, and many others. For in this moment, we pause to show respect, to honor the lives lost, and those here that are changed, and most importantly, to never forget. If you please rise, I'd like to introduce Jason Baker, the Sacramento Law Enforcement Chaplain, to provide an opening prayer.
This being behind me was created to be part of an engineering masterpiece, the New York City skyscraper, the World Trade Center Tower. It stood tall and proud. It symbolized pride and joy of America. It was the center of stability and strength until one day someone tried to take it down. It was destroyed into a pile of rubble and bent metal that our enemy fought with cripples. What actually happens is a true testament of the American people. We stood back up. We fought back. And we rebuilt even stronger than before. Today we are here to remember and grieve for the lives that were lost. But today is also a day to remember who we are as a nation. Resilient and united as one. Please join me in prayer. Almighty God, today we gather to pause and remember the events on that Tuesday morning in New York City, Washington, D.C., and Somerset County, Pennsylvania. We remember the thousands of innocent lives that were taken on that day. We grieve for those who lost their fights in the following days and weeks. We continue to pray for those who are still suffering long-term effects, both physically and emotionally. Those who can still see, hear, and feel the events of that day. We ask for a blessing of provision for the countless families and friends who are affected by the loss of a loved one. We honor those who have subsequently decided to step up and serve those in need and fight for justice. We hold in the highest regards those who have given the ultimate sacrifice on that day and the years following because they wanted to stand up for what is right and serve others and administer justice. Father, we ask for a special blessing of peace over this ceremony today as we grieve all the lives that were lost and the lives that were changed forever. In your mighty name we pray. Amen.
Please remain standing. I'd like to welcome the Sacramento Police Department Honor Guard, led by Lieutenant Brett K. Welcome to the stage, VFW Post 67 Auxiliary President Evelyn Carrasco for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Good morning. So please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing as we welcome VFW District 17 vocalist Juliet Kennedy to perform our national anthem.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming,
Thank you. You may be seated. We lucked out this morning with the weather. It's not getting too hot on us, so we'll continue. We're honored to hear from a few dignitaries shortly, but we want to recognize a number of others we won't hear from today. We'll start with, in no particular order, we have Sacramento City Councilman Eric Guerra here with us. Mr. Honorable Roger Dickinson is in the house with us today. Thank you very much. We will be admin of the state of California, VFW Roger Meyer here with us today as well. And you'll hear shortly from a number of other dignitaries, and we'll get right into those. Joining us from the city of Oak Grove, we have Councilwoman Stephanie Nguyen for the first remarks.
Good morning, everybody. Actually, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak here for a bit. I was only 22 years old when this happened, and I remember it vividly like it was yesterday. I turned on the news like I would do every morning, right before I would go to work, and I saw what had happened, and I thought I was watching a movie. I couldn't believe it. And I would switch the channels over and over again, and I would see the same image and the same story. And all I could think about as a daughter of refugees is that this here is going to divide our community. It's going to divide our world. But as years progress, and as we move forward and we remember this day every day, what I've seen more and heard earlier today is that we come together more now than ever during this day here. Soon after that, I would marry. I married a police officer, actually. And so listening and reading to what the chief had said earlier, I'm sorry. I can't help but think you're right. How many women ran into that building? Didn't give it a second thought. Somebody lost their son, their daughter, their father, their mother, their brother or sister. And I want to thank all of the men and women that serve our country, because it was something that never in our mind did we think would ever happen. And they didn't give it a second thought to risk their lives and run in there for us, for our country. And that we should remember and honor them every single day, not just on 9/11. I now have 2 young girls, and I fear one day they may not be able to see their father, as our chief mentioned earlier. And so we make it a point every year during 9/11 to light a candle and to remember and never forget. Because what I don't want to see is that as years progress, we forget. And we see this as any other day. Because we can't let that happen. And so I want to thank you. Thank you for all coming out today. Thank you for remembering this day. And I encourage you, if you have young children, grandchildren, that you talk about this later and you educate them, so that they can remember, so that they can then share this and also keep this memory alive. Thank you very much.
I'd like to welcome to the podium DJ2 on behalf of Office of Congressman George Smith.
Good morning, everyone. My name is DJ2, and I'm the field representative for the Congressman here, Congressman George Smith. On behalf of the Congresswoman and our office, I want to thank all the event organizers for always making this event so miraculous. To remember those and commemorate the ones that we've lost. And to our great first responders. In the face of the tragic events and heartbreaks of 9/11, first responders, service members, everyday Americans across this country, united together as one to heal a wounded nation. Today, I'm proud to be with all of you to reaffirm that commitment to each other. And to continue, as I've always said before, you strengthen our Sacramento community bonds. I want to thank all of you again for ensuring that we continue this tradition, and for your dedication to bring remembrance to all the lives that were lost. The families and our brave heroes. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'd like to welcome to the podium Congressman Ami Barrett in California Congressional District 7. Sorry. Thank you. As December 7th defined a generation with a background in Pearl Harbor, for my generation, my moment, but both carried the same thing. It was an attack on what we stand for as the United States of America, the freedoms that we have. And, it is important for us to remember, not just on 9/11, but every day, the freedoms and what our country represents. It is a symbol around the world. And, though 9/11 happened 21 years ago, we have to fight for our freedom every day. We have to remember the brave men and women that are around this world representing who we are as Americans. And that is what this is about. It is what we represent as a country, freedoms, the diversity. Councilmember Lynn talked about welcoming the refugees. We continue to do this, and we can be proud of our community to welcome those refugees, the folks that have lived under tyranny, to welcome them with open arms here, to experience who we are. So on this 21st anniversary of 9/11, let's remember and let's bless those that lost their lives on that day, but also let's bless those that stepped up to protect our country, to protect our freedoms, those families that made those sacrifices. God bless them. God bless the men and women that do this every day around the world. Let's recognize them. And God bless the United States of America and what we represent as a country. God bless all of you, and God bless all of them. Be well. Thank you. I'd like to welcome to the stage Captain Jose Ayon on behalf of the California Department of Veterans Affairs. Captain Ayon just returned from a 14th-month deployment to Kuwait. So thank you and welcome.
Good morning. As mentioned, my name is Jose Ayon. I'm with the California Department of Veterans Affairs. On behalf of Secretary Vito Bastiani and Deputy Secretary Jose Rodriguez Murillo, I'm here to read off the Governor's proclamation for Patriot Day. This 11th of September marks 21 years since the attacks of September 11, 2001, which claimed nearly 3,000 lives and changed our world. Every year since, we have observed this anniversary as Patriot Day, to remember those we lost and honor the courageous first responders and men and women from all walks of life who took action to protect their fellow Americans. As we reflect on the past 21 years, we also commemorate the service members who answered our nation's call in the aftermath of the attacks. We will never forget their sacrifices to protect our shared freedom and way of life. On this day of remembrance, I have ordered all flags on state buildings to be flown at half-staff. Let us pay tribute to the American heroes we have lost and recommit to the values of equality, opportunity, and freedom our nation stands for. Now, therefore, I, Gavin Newsom, Governor of the State of California, do hereby proclaim September 11th as Patriot Day. Thank you.
Thank you for that. That was double disappointing. I'd like to welcome to the stage somebody that those of you in the United States Army would know as a 98 Golf, somebody who attended DLI for Russian language, and you may know her as City of Sacramento Chief of Police, Kathy West.
That's no easy feat, I assure you. Just thank you, everyone. I'm very honored to be here. Like Councilmember Nguyen said, I was afraid at some point our country would not remember this day because so many of us were were alive now weren't there to witness it, and that future generations of Americans would not have the sense of historic impact that this day has had on all of us. And that 9/11 may fade into history, and I'm glad and very proud of our community and our country that that is in fact not the case. The opposite is actually true, and that this day continues to be a day of reverence and memory for those whose lives tragically ended that day. You know, we may never know what may have become or what individual contributions our fellow Americans may have made to our country and to those around us, but what I do know is that they will never be forgotten. Also, I note the efforts of many who responded, not just that day, but in the many months that followed, are not forgotten as well. And this should inspire all of us to be better citizens. If you haven't had the opportunity to see the 9/11 Memorial in New York, I really encourage everyone to make that trip and to see what lies there. I was back in New York for a conference, and at the end of the day, I had a little bit of time, and I really wanted to see it because I had been to the World Trade Center before the attacks and just knew what a massive complex that was. And I just couldn't imagine in my head, you know, what this could possibly look like now. So I came into the museum a little bit late in the afternoon, and one thing I didn't know is that they bring in survivors on a regular basis to talk about their experiences and what they went through that day. Certainly, I see it from the police perspective, the law enforcement, the first responder perspective, but I can tell you it was really a neat opportunity to hear from someone who had been there and survived it. And there's two people that spoke to us. The first was an attorney for the Port Authority, and their office was actually in the lower basement area of the towers. If you've been there, you know that prior to the attack, there were multi-level stories. There was a shopping center, the subway ran through there, and there were a number of offices. And he talked about his staff and how they had to really just absolutely fight for their lives to get through the rubble and the dark and the chaos. And so listening to that story really put it into perspective. The second speaker was a gentleman from Disney, the Department of Sanitation, New York. And I remember thinking, wrongly so, like, I'm not sure what this guy really, you know, could possibly tell us, but I can tell you, he spent 9 months, he and his fellow Disney, DSNY, staff at the site of the World Trade Center, and day in and day out, they went in to remove rubble, and they continued to find people and made contact with family members and talked about the 9 months that followed that tragic day. So it wasn't just that day, but the 9 months, the year that followed, and certainly the years now that continue to impact us. And I remember thinking how important it is for all of us to publicly serve. And it's not just law enforcement and firefighters and medics. We certainly have a role, but it's all of us, as you can see, sitting here. We certainly have a number of our community members who have made this their calling as well, and I thank you for that. I, too, have spent my life in the industry of service. Like Matt said, I joined the Army at 17, and at 17, like most 17-year-olds, you really don't know a lot. So I really barely grasped the importance of the defense of freedom and basic rights. However, as the years have passed, and certainly in my current profession, I know now that the pursuit of basic human rights is a critical job for which America is well suited. We all remember where we were on 9/11. I remember having worked a really long shift the night before, and I had a call from my best friend to turn on the news. Like many of us, we just sat there stunned, couldn't believe what we were seeing. And very shortly, I was back at work, and I still really just didn't understand, you know, what we were facing. I know that day, the U.S. experienced the single worst terrorist attack in human history. We had 4 American planes that were hijacked, and they were flown into American buildings, killing nearly 3,000 people. And people around the world watched the news as 5 stories of the Pentagon fell, and the World Trade Center buildings collapsed entirely. And I also remember later that evening, as I know many of you will, that President George Bush addressed the nation with a brief but very powerful message that chose to focus not on fear, but on America's strength and unity. And that's a message I want to share with you now. He addressed us by saying, quote, "These acts of mass murder were intended to frighten our nation into chaos and retreat, but they have failed. Our country is strong. A great people has been moved to defend a great nation. Terrorist attacks can shake the foundations of our biggest buildings, but they cannot touch the foundation of America. These acts shatter steel, but they cannot dent the steel of American resolve. America was targeted for attack because we are the brightest beacon for freedom and opportunity in the world, and no one will keep that light from shining. So as many of us were numb for days and months as we tried to process what had happened to our lives, our nation, and our families, of those who lost loved ones, for the first time ever that I remember, we came together as a country, and it was a remarkable thing. We set aside differences and we unified against the common enemy of terrorism. We saw small acts of kindness everywhere. Violence towards each other was exchanged for acceptance and common purpose. Sadly, that effect has not been permanent. And yet I personally remember the change that we collectively made, the unity, the kindness, and the love towards each other. So while 9/11 remains this tragic event in our history, I am so proud that we continue to remember and honor it. But let us not forget that it was not just the loss of that day that is important, but all of the unity, togetherness, and cooperation that emerged in the days that followed. If I had one wish for us, even today, it would be that we as Americans could regularly recall the strength when we came together like that 21 years ago. Today, we often hear about the division in our country, the violence, the rifts, and the basic fabric of who we are. So I implore all of us to remember the significance of 9/11 and the power that day had, because we all want to see the world become a better place. And I firmly believe that in order to do that, we must work in the spirit of shared common goals. And we are better as a people and nation. We are accepting of others and lift one another up to not only solve shared problems, but also to share the goodness that we have in each other. And we saw this everywhere after 9/11. So as we think about this day that happened 21 years ago, I would ask each and every one of us here today to remember what this country became in the midst of the greatest tragedy we've ever experienced on American soil. And I would not just remember this day as a time when we rallied together, but recognize it for the change it made in how we face the world, and also how we have the power to collectively solve some of our greatest challenges. The world now more than ever needs the values and the principles that America stands for, not just globally, but here at home. As you contemplate that day, 9/11, and the power it had over us and continues to have, I encourage each and every one of us to honor those who lost their lives by working to promote unity and not divisiveness, to give grace to our fellow man and woman, and to respect our differences while we foster an atmosphere of acceptance and tolerance. Only once we have done that can we really hope to change the world for the better. So thank you for recognizing the importance of the day. Thank you for being here to honor it. And may it drive us all to be better people, better family members, and better citizens. Thank you. When we rally together, but recognize it for the change it made in how we face the world, and also how we have the power to collectively solve some of our greatest challenges. The world now more than ever needs the values and the principles that America stands for, not just globally, but here at home. As you contemplate that day, 9/11, and the power it had over us and continues to have, I encourage each and every one of us to honor those who lost their lives by working to promote unity and not divisiveness, to give grace to our fellow man and woman, and to respect our differences while we foster an atmosphere of acceptance and tolerance. Only once we have done that can we really hope to change the world for the better. So thank you for recognizing the importance of the day. Thank you for being here to honor it. And may it drive us all to be better people, better family members, and better citizens. Thank you.
I'd like to welcome to the stage our next speaker, Mr. Gil Sanborn, Civilian Aide to United States Army, Pacific, North, and the Sierras.
Thank you, Matt. Good morning, everyone. I want to begin first by thanking specific people and organizations who made this a day possible. In particular, starting with Channel 17 who's televising the event today. They did a fantastic job last year, great job in editing, and I appreciate you returning this year. Staples, who provided the photographs that you see surrounding the exhibits. Miss Josie Lee, the Marketing and Communications Coordinator for Cal Expo. Miss Ann Donahue, Public Affairs. Unfortunately, she's ill and couldn't make it today. Michael Flores, photographer. Steve Lonnie of Cal Expo, who's been ringing the bells here for 8 years and has worked on this exhibit for 20 years. Frank Uringer and Pride Industries, Bill Rios and the California Mexican American Veterans Memorial Foundation, and finally Rick Pickering, the Chief Executive of Cal Expo. It's truly an honor to be invited back to participate in this very important event. As the man indicated, I'm a civilian aide to the Secretary of the Army, and I've served in that capacity for 14 years, 8 in Connecticut and 6 out here. My path to this position started from the next building in the World Trade Center. In 2009, Congress declared September 11th as a National Day of Service and Remembrance. This morning I want to give you definitions of both remembrance and service that are broader than what we typically associate with those words around 9/11. An important part of remembrance is that we review the critical events of that morning and that we pass on our own stories of that day to younger generations, as has been discussed by prior speakers. Every one of you can tell me where you were and how you found out about the attacks and all the conversations you had with friends and loved ones to try to make sense of it all. Last year I gave you my own account as an eyewitness about the sensory overload of the 2 strikes in the towers next to me, of the crush of terrorized people racing down the stairwell of my building to escape what we thought was a third target, of the sounds of sirens and horns from every direction converging on the towers, and the rescue workers lining up to go into those towers, of office workers jumping to escape the flames, of the F-15 that screamed past us, signaling that we were safe, and finally the rumble behind me that sounded like a freight train that was the South Tower collapsing on itself, killing many of the rescue workers I had seen only moments before. Those sounds and sensations endure in my body and brain to this day. But remembrance of 9/11 also means studying, teaching, and learning about its complex origins and the consequences of it across the globe for a very important reason. Those attacks were designed not just to kill people, but to terrorize this country. They left us all in shock and in fear. Fear of another attack. Fear of people who look different, who have darker skin, darker hair, and who practice other religions. I felt that fear myself. For 10 years after 9/11, I had a duffel bag under my desk. It had a gas mask, a hazmat suit, rope, a hammer to break glass in case I had to lower myself down, the outside of my building, and water to sustain myself if I had to walk out of Manhattan. When I flew on business trips, I picked an aisle seat as close to the front as I could get in case we had a takeover. And I scrutinized every single passenger for any sign that they could be a terrorist, starting with their ethnicity. Over time, I realized that to counter my fears, I needed to study the forces behind 9/11 as comprehensively as I could, and the best way to do it was to research the objectives of the attacks, the background of the attackers, and the origins of the religious fanaticism that drove them. As a result of that study, as I said last year, I know that we were not attacked by a religion or an ethnicity we're attacked by a hatred born of ignorance, isolation, and intolerance. That hatred can rise from any border in any country. For generations born after 9/11, who may have teachers who were young children themselves on 9/11, the school curriculum and guidance on teaching about 9/11 is dangerously deficient. And when we have a vacuum in knowledge and understanding of such critical historical events, when we are ignorant, we're all vulnerable to manipulation and exploitation. Fear breeds fear, and it breeds prejudice and intolerance. A couple of years ago, a survey of teachers asking how they teach about 9/11 revealed that many have been pushed back by parents when they teach their students that the Islamist extremists who hijacked the planes on 9/11 don't represent the views of all Muslims. And many teachers also discuss students who come into the classroom filled with conspiracy theories. So remembrance not only means recollecting the key events of that day, it also means teaching and learning. The second part of the declaration by Congress in 2009 for 9/11, that it be a day of service, was based on the need to understand and reflect on the sacrifices of first responders on 9/11, as well as the service members sent to war, and our obligation as citizens to honor them with our own service in our own communities and to our nation. This morning, I want to highlight and honor the services and sacrifices of a silent, unheralded group that stands resolutely behind our first responders and service members, the families who support them, the mothers and fathers, brothers and sisters, wives and husbands, and sons and daughters who support them through missed holidays, birthdays, and vacations, through the long shift and deployments, through the worry and the stress. I learned about the heavy burden military families shoulder and the role they played in supporting their soldiers when we began with my community's support of the Dagger Brigade in Germany. And a major part of my community support was to the families in Schweinfurt during their deployments. I know that the families of first responders share many of the same burdens and provide the same critical support to their family members on the front lines. In 2007, when my son and I went to visit the families of the brigade in Germany, halfway through the first deployment, the wife of a battalion commander asked me if people in America understood what they were going through and whether anyone cared. Those questions sent chills up my spine and became a driving force for me in educating civilians about how much our military and first responder families sacrifice on our behalf. In closing, I would like to ask the audience here to stand up and join me in a round of recognition and thanks to the families of all first responders and servicemen and women this morning, families of first responders listening to our event from New York, and the family members of military serving around the world. So hold your imaginary glass. Here's to the families. Thank you all for letting me speak here today. God bless this expo exhibit. God bless our first responders, the members of the military, their families, and God bless America. Thank you.
Thank you for your remarks. I'd like to welcome to the podium now for the sequence of events as well as the consequence of events, Paulette Speak Rios as well as Phil Rios. Thank you.
Sequence of events, Tuesday morning, September 11th, 2001, 8:46 a.m. American Airlines Flight 11 crashes into
floors 93 through 99 of the World Trade Center North Tower, killing 92 passengers and crew members. 9:03 a.m. United Airlines Flight 175 crashes into floors 75 to 85 of World Trade Center South Tower, killing 65 passengers and crew members. 9:37 a.m. American Airlines 77 crashes into western facade of the Pentagon, Washington, D.C., killing 64 passengers and crew members, plus 125 inside the Pentagon, and wounding hundreds of military and civilian personnel. 9:59 a.m. South Tower of World Trade Center collapses, killing approximately 600 citizens, New York Port Authority, New York City police officers, and New York City firemen. 10:07 a.m. United Airlines Flight 93 impacts into the ground near Shanksville, Somerset County, Pennsylvania, killing 44 passengers and crew members. 10:28 a.m. North Tower of World Trade Center collapses, killing approximately 1,692 citizens, New York Port Authority, New York City police officers, and New York City firemen. 200 citizens chose to jump to escape a horrible fiery death. 200 souls perished while trapped in elevators. And I would like to add, welcome home. Thank you for your service to the bravest of the brave soldiers returning from Kuwait. God bless you all.
Morning, my name is Phil Rios. Is you okay?
Yes, sir.
First off, I'd like to quickly thank the staff and all the energy and effort they put into Cal Expo together with Josie to bring this thing together. In the past years, I worked with the staff 9 years of 10 people. Josie and her crew are doing the work of 10. I want to commend Josie doing one heck of a job. Thank you, Josie. We also invited, just hit people of faith, creeds, and beliefs. Sacramento Diocese invited a representative from the Catholic Church. Father, bless you, Father. Thank you for showing. We invited the synagogue on 4th Street, the Muslims representative. There's 2 representatives to be here. Are they in attendance? Assalamu alaikum. Alhamdulillah. Assalam. Thank you. And the Sikh faith is here, and also the Jewish faith, Shalom. This impacted all faiths. And there's also a Sharon Sequeira. Sharon? Yeah. Sharon was flight attendant at American Airlines. She was at JFK when the impact hit. And I want to recognize Sharon. Thank you. We gather here today as a nation, as a community, as individual citizens to honor and remember those innocent souls of various nationalities, faiths, race, or gender who were killed in that horrific terrorist attack against our great nation, the United States of America. This event, this memorial, is not intended to dwell on the tragedies of that morning 21 years ago, but hopefully to provide an opportunity to educate the younger generations of the significant consequences that follow. We ask all citizens in their own belief or faith to please pause during your busy day to offer prayers for those who still suffer. For the brave men and women of the fire departments, public safety first responders, and the law enforcement who run towards danger to save, protect, and serve, then as of now. For men and women in our armed forces, the Army, Navy, Marines, Air Force, Coast Guard, Space Force, who have served and are now serving in harm's way. Let's take a moment and welcome home the 319th Expeditionary Signal Battalion, led by Lieutenant Colonel Stephanie Lee, who returned from a tour of duty in Kuwait, and Major Manis Captain Arabo and the 319th Expeditionary Signal Battalion troops. They're right behind you. Thank you. As a footnote, I was younger and I was thinner, and I led my squad, 2nd Squad, 5th Platoon, 270 MP Company Battalion, combat support. I led them into Kuwait City, 1991, to take the city back. Different time. Thank you, troops. Thank you. In conclusion, a war that began October 7, 2001, as a result of the terrorist attack on 911, ended on August 30th, 2021. Operation Enduring Freedom, Afghanistan, 2,448 killed in action. 20,754 wounded in action. 18 CIA agents killed in action. 822 civilian contractors killed. Operation Iraq Freedom, 6,840 killed in action. 41,000 wounded in action. Please pause and offer the comfort and prayers to those mothers and fathers who became Gold Star members. All gave some gave all, lest they not be forgotten. God bless you all.
Thank you very much. We'd like to continue on with the tradition rich in the military as well as the first responders with the ceremonial wreath laying led by Pride Industries. Please welcome Craig Walton, Tim Young, and Dana Almora, as well as the Chief of the Cal Expo Police Department. Our bugler was Bill Tubbs, United States Army. I'd like to welcome to the podium two officers from the Sacramento City Police Department, Officer Jessica Cummings and Michael Manch, to read the list of names. At this very moment, on September 11, 2001, New York City came under a terrorist attack. Almost 3,000 people died. The New York City Police Department responded to the World Trade Center buildings in a show of strength and courage that earned them the respect of the world. 23 brave members did not return from ground zero. We honor them daily by protecting the American way of life for which they died on that day. They, and each of you, personify what is best about the city, this country, and our deeds. As we observe this anniversary of the tragic events on September 11, 2001, take pride in knowing that history will remember that the New York City Police Department demonstrated the highest principles of service and humanity in their response that day. May events never require us to do so again. We will now call the roll of the members of the New York City Police Department killed in the line of duty on September 11, 2001.
Sergeant John Coughlin. Sergeant Michael Curtin. Sergeant Rodney Gillis. Sergeant Timothy Roy. Detective Cloud Richards. Detective Joseph Vigiano. Police Officer John D'Alara. Police Officer Vincent Dan. Police Officer Jerome Dominguez. Police Officer Stephen Driscoll. Police Officer Mark Ellis. Police Officer Robert Claudio. Police Officer Ronald Klupfer. Police Officer Thomas Lagone. Police Officer James Leahy. Police Officer Brian McDonald. Police Officer John Perry. Police Officer Glenn Petit. Police Officer Moira Smith. Police Officer Raymond Suarez. Police Officer Paul Halty. Police Officer Santo Valentin. Police Officer Walter Weaver. May you rest in peace.
That was United States Army Chuck Davidson on the bugle. Excuse me. I'd like to welcome back to the stage Chief Craig Walton, Expo Chief of Police, to share his closing remarks.
I'd like to take this opportunity one more time to thank everybody that showed up to support the memorial and help all of us remember. 9/11 was the start of a change in our entire world. The United States as a whole Never saw anything like it, and since we've never seen anything like it again, and hopefully we won't. I'd like to thank the military, the uniformed personnel, the firefighters that are here with us today, and the police officers. aWESome thanks you for being here. The 9/11 Memorial Committee thanks you, and they thank you for your support. Thanks for coming.
Invite back up to the stage Chaplain Jason Baker for closing remarks.
And as we leave here today, go about our lives, I ask that you remember your brother, your sister, your coworker, the checker at the grocery store, the person next to you in traffic. They too might be struggling with grief in the events on this day. Grief knows no boundaries. It discriminates against no one. It does not know the concept of time. Everyone grieves loss in their own way, at different times. I ask that you offer grace to those around you. And in the same token, allow yourself to grieve in your own way and in your own time. Please join me in a closing prayer. Almighty Father, we come to you today. We remember the pain and loss in the most difficult time in this generation in America. We have seen loved ones taken away without warning. We have seen heroes stand in the gap and also lose their battle. But through those difficult times and sacrifices, with your help, we are winning the war. Lord, we know that you will remain faithful to what is right, what is just, and what is good. Today I ask a special blessing over our leaders in the local, state, and national levels to remain steadfast in their pursuit of justice. Lord, protect them, keep them strong in order to serve their nation well. I also pray a special blessing of protection and strength over our military, law enforcement, and first responders. They are the ones that willingly put their lives on the line on a daily basis. God, we are grateful for your continued protection over this great nation, and we ask that your blessings overflow. We pray all these things in your mighty name. Amen.
In conclusion, we'd like to thank all of you for coming today. Those of you that are watching via live stream from New York City, first responders, fire, and police joining as well. We want to thank our veterans, those who just returned from a deployment, the veterans who wore the uniform a long time ago, and the first responders as well, the police and fire that are continuing to serve us. As we contemplate this day and where the next leads, I want to leave you with an ask. Take a moment. Take a moment to realize what the people who died on that day lived for. Take a moment to realize what those who stood up then and continue to stand up for us now, what they lived for. And I promise you, the same thing that happened 21 years ago tomorrow will happen September 12th, 2022. The sun will rise again. The sun will rise across the United States as long as we stand for the ideals that people have stood for 21 years ago and well before then. So we thank you all for coming today, and we hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you.